I went to Sundance, and while I was at Sundance, the deal was negotiated. And when I came back from Sundance in early February, we had our meeting with Canon, and it was interesting. As we walked into this meeting with Golan Globus, and they said, okay, you two guys, you're from Texas, you're making a scary movie. And they took a sniff, okay, and that's all they needed. Two guys smell like they're from Texas and are making a scary movie. And they greenlit the picture. This was like the end of February. The movie was released the end of August that same year. So that gives you some idea of how he catapulted into this film. You know, what it was this phenomenal thing that had happened kind of by accident, it seemed, and really out of the brilliant imagination of Tobe Hooper and Kim Hinkle. And so it was only like, let's do something fun with this. There was no, and at the same time scary, fun and scary. There was no, we weren't doing anything else. We weren't making a big deal out of doing this. I mean, going down there and looking at everybody, putting them into the different roles of crew in the movie. In Caroline Williams, we had done auditions with everybody, and we kind of condensed it to like 4 girls or 3 girls. And then Tobe came in. I mean, everything we did in prep Tobe, so that he'd come in and he would give the final yes or no. So I got involved in all these things. Caroline Williams, and I'm very pleased to say this, after the film was finished and released, we went to the Sitges Film Festival, which is the Cine Fantastique festival outside of Barcelona. And we were there with David Lynch, and he was showing Blue Velvet. And Caroline Williams was in competition with Isabella Rossellini for Best Actress, and Caroline won Best Actress. So that just tells you how pleased we were about Caroline Williams. This was the point at which, after Blue Velvet, that Dennis was coming back into his career. So he looked at this and thought, okay, I'm going to go someplace, and it's going to be basically a place of work. So we all lived in this sort of motel, elaborate, upscale suites motel. And Dennis would go out every morning. We'd see him at breakfast, and he would go out and go to Willie Nelson's golf course and play golf with Willie until it was time for him to go to work. So for him, this was like the most sober thing he could do. I mean, yeah, he was making this insane movie, but it was a very sober context for him to be in. It was safe. The thing was that we got it. Me and Tobe were like this in our heads and what we were doing, and the actors were like this also. I mean, Tobe's method of work was he'd go to the set. He had a sketch artist with him all the time, and he would end up with a map that the sketch artist would then lay on the table of the angles, shots, and the sequence of when each would be, you know, what came next, what came next, what came. He's incredibly prepared. I mean, originally it was supposed to be set outside of Dallas. I think maybe that still feels like it because it's Texas OU weekend. Because we knew there would be a lot of kids on the streets, and so, like the chainsaw people would see lots of bait there. And that Texas OU weekend is one of the weekends in Dallas where all kinds of insanity happens. You know, kids get into fights and stuff like that. So that actually, what's cut out of the film is this little television episode of news that Dennis is watching in his room, where Dan Jenkins and Kinky Friedman are the newscasters talking about Texas OU weekend. And we shot, that was the first thing we shot actually, was those guys in a television studio in Austin. That got cut out of the film because it was like, oh, Cannon just didn't get it. You know? And one of my favorite moments at Seachez was there was a press conference, and a journalist stood up, and it was all being filmed, and he said, "Can you tell me," he was like from France, "why are there so many lights in the tunnel?" And I just burst out laughing. It was like, what a great question. Because what Kerry White had done is like scattered all kinds of little lights and little candles and little, I mean, he lit up the tunnels in a way that was full of texture. You know? And that was just fine with Toby, you know, that it looked that way. You know? Because he spent a lot of time in those tunnels, so he wanted them to look interesting, you know, and different. You know, not just a black hole to run down. The idea that horror and family go together or don't, I think is crystallized in one simple example. On the saw is the phrase, "the saw is family." And in fact, when New Line made the number 3, Mike DeLuca said to me, "There's only one piece of this that we're going to take, because we're going to ignore, because you made fun of everybody, and that's going to be the saw is family. We're going to keep that." And that's sort of the combination and contradiction of the statement that you're asking about how do you put family and horror together. So the original poster was, we took the poster for the Breakfast Club, and we actually got a photographer down there and put the cast up against a white background, and looking at the way the people were arranged in that poster for Breakfast Club, we rearranged the people in the family, the Chainsaw family. So there was, and that was a poster that was up on Sunset Boulevard when the film was opening. So there were very conscious tricks being pulled off here. Yeah. What I can remember was it was very hard to shoot the bridge that night with the 2 yuppies and then Leatherface rising out of the back. That was difficult. The end of the film, the last image, was difficult because it was, you know, Caroline sort of in the tower, swinging around with the chainsaw and having finally cracked. You know, now she was nuts. You know, and we had a boom shot, you know, that rose up to find her there. That was hard. I don't really think about hard stuff. I mean, one of my favorite things about the film is that we were able to get into a lot of things that I liked as a kid in Texas, as a Texas kid. One of them, for example, being Big Red sodas. We sort of got a truckload of Big Red sodas and put them all over the set. Big Red sodas is this very sweet drink that you get in Texas called Big Red. And what Kerry White just decorated the set with Big Red soda in glass bottles all over the place, because it was like it had a, you know, the echo of blood, but it was actually soda pop. That kind of nuttiness, that kind of the ability to pull in part of your life, turn it upside down and stick it in a movie. You know, as you know, all movies have some autobiographical aspect to them. I mean, Lefty Enright is a combination of my father, who was a left-handed guy and who, when he played high school football, was known as Lefty, and another high school football player that I played football with named Enright. So I made a hero out of my father and this other football kid who was a hero to me when I was playing football in Texas. I mean, so all of these, you know, you do put your personal life into this. And even an insane movie like this. And I think that adds some kind of felt but invisible juice to it. I mean, it all worked. The thing is, all this stuff worked. You know, the scene between Dennis and Stretch, between Enright and Stretch, when he discovers that they are father-daughter, happens on the steps outside the radio station, and it happens in a very subtle way. You know, it's like, who's your mother? Where were you born? I mean, it's nothing direct and simple. It's an emotional conclusion that he's searching for, because he's in this search. This whole movie is about his search to find the people who killed other members of his family. Yeah. When I was writing the script, and I was at the Chateau Marmont, and David Mamet was here writing his first Hollywood script, and we would exchange scripts at the Chateau, and David Mamet loved it. Okay, that made me feel good, you know, and he named it Chainsaw 2. He named it Saw 2. Right? After the film came out, I was told by Penn and Teller, whom I met, that Kathy Bates loved the film, and that on her answering machine at the time, she had a line of dialogue from the film. When you call Kathy Bates and the phone answers and the voice says, "Lick my plate, dog dick." You know, that was Kathy Bates loving the film and pulling that line of dialogue from Chop Top and putting it on her answering machine. I thought that the music on the film was really nicely put together, and that the girl who did that, whose name I can't remember, but you can look up, Karen, I think is, she then, years later, had become some kind of a phenomenon, and she did Pulp Fiction. I was very pleased with the fact that this was her first one, and that everybody referred to it, you know, and that it got her career going. There is a nice soundtrack. Yeah, I mean, it's like key people to me, people who matter to me, like Tarantino tells me how much he loves the film, you know. But I don't go out I don't go to horror conventions, you know. I don't need any approval. I know it was good. I know he did it. You know? And I mean, what I remember is that we had to work really fast, and that we were unstoppable, and that Tom Savini made a lot of blood, and we had 3 crews shooting. I mean, I remember the battlefield rush of doing this film, and that's what I hold. Yeah.
Probably through my older brother. I was down here on a weekend from Fort Hood, and we went by when Toby was shooting a movie called The Heisters. One of his first things. I don't remember much about it. Some kind of a little carnival romp. I mean, a sort of a tour de force or a comedy, you know. And I think I helped pull some of the set down. And then through the years, I bumped into him as I came down from Fort Hood. And then after I moved here, we became pretty good friends. And I started working with him. And so we would run a film crew out of an MGB that he had. We'd snake the cables in that thing, and we'd take the cameras out of their cases and stick them in there between the cables and fold the lights up, stick them up in a little corner, and go around and shoot commercials. So I worked with him. I worked on Eggshells with him, and then I was on the crew of Chainsaw. That was hard. It was awfully hard. It was really awfully hard, and it was hot, and there was a lot of inexperience on it. A lot of people were getting their chops on it. We had to shoot one whole week over again because the camera was out of focus that we rented, and nobody knew enough to do a camera test on it. There were all sorts of things. The food, you know, we didn't know what kind of food we needed. The caterer just brought food, you know, beef stroganoff when it's 105. No, not sure right food. You know, and they had to settle that kind of thing. There was no place to go to get out of the heat. There was just a set, so it was really hardcore. One of my fond memories is after that week, we didn't discover that out of focus stuff because we had not got a routine of shipping the dailies off every day, the film off every day and seeing the dailies. And so then I was on a heavy duty schedule of the film goes off every night. Well, I had mailers and I had tape, but I didn't have any boxes. So I'd have to come into town, and there was this particular 7-Eleven over at 15th and San Jacinto that always had good boxes in the dumpster. So the close of my day was jumping in the dumpster to look for boxes that was appropriate for however much film I had and get it off and then go home. So it was really hard. I admit that I became one of the naysayers. There was another individual that was really a naysayer that said snake bit, don't know what they're doing. And I have to confess that I bought into too much of that. And so I was not one of the stalwarts that believed. I hope I still worked hard. I think I did. I called myself a working assistant cameraman, which is make the shot work. I wasn't sitting around pulling focus and doing that. Made the shot work. If there's something not right with the stuff out there, my pleasure was I became the chainsaw expert. Here's how you get it to go on the first crank. Here's how you do it. You start it up, you flood it, you turn it off. Then the carburetor is full of gas. Then you turn the switch back on. So then it's ready and crank, because all of a sudden we were doing that, where people, there's Leatherface going like this. It won't do, So, I take credit for that, made the shot work. That's what I did. And so that was hardcore. I did have to leave the film a little early. I had my baby due and my daughter was due. And so I had to head back to Colorado, lived out in the mountains. Don't know how fast the script came. It could have come quite quick, right to me. And I haven't looked through my scripts in a coon's age, so I don't know. I haven't looked over them. Some other people have raised some questions about my part got bigger. And I don't remember that it did particularly, but there's always rewrites on things. But I'm sure it all happened fast from spring to summer start, it feels like. So here we go with the... you got to rig up your loogie, and, there I spit down the corner of a hall in the radio station. And, and then it just multiplied until LG sits up with his face gone and boy, if you didn't see the tattoo and the nose, this is LG. Well, they say one time for the guy that's got his hand around, that's paying attention, 2 for the guy that's dropped his popcorn, and 3 for the guy that's really trying to get a hold of a tit over here, and so it had 3 times of. I don't know, the Fry House, they put it together. I tell people I was raised with Lincoln Logs, which is way before Lego and American bricks and toys like that. So I enjoyed the Fry House. I mean, certainly as it has played out. I'm sitting there smacking on some good fries, and wherever they got them, they looked like those good Hyde Park fries. But, I advised toothpicks. That's what makes it. You hide the toothpicks. I was pretty much tied up early in the show, starting with the makeup, and they're getting cast and they're talking about various things. And so I was always over there. That was my connection to the movie, because they're starting up and I don't know where they're going. They're out shooting stuff. I think the first time I was on the set was the aftermath of the chainsaw thing on the bridge, which you can still see over there on the way to the airport. It's there's some artificial skid marks up the culvert by the bridge, yeah. I mean, my experience with Gunner had been, he couldn't take his mask off because it was going to tear or something. So all of our conversations about poetry and about philosophy were, I was talking to this guy and I'd think every once in a while, I can't believe this is happening. It's a beautiful sunset, huh, Gunner? And then it carried on. Here I'm doing it again with another bright, intelligent guy, that physically delivered. Physically delivered. and emotionally delivered. You know, I went by and I think that they just looked at me and figured out what they were going to do. And they sort of brought me into what they were going to do to me by showing me books. I mean, they had some books like, oh, you don't want to ever see again, of really dreadful things that happen to people. But they slowly brought me into that. And then slowly, there was the big day where I went in and got cast. So they poured the goo all over me, the rubber goo all over the head, and you know, I was getting to know the guys around there, so I was excited about being in the movie. So I just dropped by; they'd be working on something else, and you know, on other props, I assume, and getting their gear ready. And there was the day that they came in and they put that stuff all over me. I think I had 2 straws in my nose. I'm bound to have had, because it took a minute or two, and I wouldn't have been holding my breath. And I think Tom said, you know, you can communicate with me by, you know, or maybe he didn't, but I reached around like this. I was in the goo and I reached around and Tom put out his hand and I drew an H and he said H and I wrote O and he said H-O and I wrote a T and he said hot. Yeah, we know. It's hot in there. Yeah, it'll be off in a minute. You know, it's like, ooh, man. And then they pulled it off and they immediately poured the plaster. And I still have that bust. They gave that bust to me. I'm the only person I know that has a bust of himself on his porch with a hat and some shades on it. You know, it's a little dusty, but it's okay. It was an otherworldly experience because I like my coffee in the morning. And they say, no, you can't drink anything. You'll ruin your makeup. What do you mean? Well, you can drink coffee through a straw. Man, coffee sucks through a straw. You can't drink hot coffee through a straw; it burns you. So it was like an otherworldly experience being driven over to the set and that it was very bizarre. The hammer was scary because the hammer was supposed to be rubber, and I said, I think I want to see this thing before you pound on me. And so I looked at it, and it had been built on some wire, like heavy clothes hanger wire. And I pushed on the head of the hammer, and it seemed to me that the wire was down there about 1/16 of an inch. And I said, oh, please, can you maybe trim this back a little bit? And so they did. And then he could really get pound on me. And, you know, Toby's going around, he's having fun. He said, come on, spit. You know, and then right in the middle of that, he spits straight up. Got a good loogie and went straight up with the thing. But that was okay. It wasn't really, Bill knew enough not to pound me. Either somebody told him, he just figured, you don't pound a guy, you make it look like you're pounding him. Because I've been pounded by experienced actors that really hurt on other stuff when I got knocked out or something. Anyway, yeah, has a hearty character. Well, you know, he's true love. You know, I came home, I went to an audition, I think, in the middle of this thing up in Dallas, and I came back, and of course, I thought that I turned these people onto that amusement park up north, because I saw it that one day and thought, man, these guys ought to know about it. And when I told them about it, they said, oh, really? There's an amusement park up there? Or something. It was just a stroke of luck that showed up, that the Statesman was empty. Amazing. I mean, you can find a warehouse but a 4-story or 5-story tall thing, amazing. The sets were amazing. Carrie was just great. There was a couple of things that kind of hacked me off on the show. They did a stunt when, Leatherface busts through the door. Well, that was me. And they didn't tell me it was going to happen. And they whacked through that door and knocked me down. And I hurt my back a little bit. But, you know, I could be on disability now. But instead, the stunt guys gave me a t-shirt, which is now shrunk, and a belt buckle. Stuntmen's Association belt buckle. What a cheap whore I was. God, well, anyway, cannon be broken. They wouldn't have any, I wouldn't be on a disability anymore anyway. But they did that, and so there was actually a stuntman. It was a stunt double, because he took the fall then from the other angle. And I had a wig and a thing like that. Yeah, but he couldn't get hammered in the head with a hammer, so, you know, I didn't want anything but me to do that. But outside of the fact that I didn't get a very good billing, You know, I kind of beef about that. I wish it would have done me better, but I was not in a position, I was not in the frame of mind where I think I would have capitalized on it anyway. So, you know, my life's been what it was. I went on a different direction before I came back to film. And, you know, so.
When did
I went out to California to see the movie when it showed at Canon Theater. There, they had a big building with the Canon logo on it, and we went there. I took my daughter out there, and we went there, and you know, I was kind of like in shock. My daughter's shrinking because her dad's getting killed. She's horrified and just hiding her head. And we go outside, and some people come along, hey, you know, it's nice. You did a good job, you know. And stand around the lobby, and these people come by. Oh yeah, very great. And they look familiar. And I said, who's that? And she said, damn, Dad. She said, that was Weird Al. Jesus, shit, I didn't know who Weird Al was. I've been away. But nice people. People said nice things. That's where I saw it, though. And we stayed a couple days and then took off. I traveled with Toby when he showed this film, when it was just first out. And people had hallucinations in a theater and imagined that the people next door to him was dead and stuff. And that was a horror film. This, Toby tried to make a send-up, a horror. Give him the horror. Yeah, there's a girl being chased and they're going to do her bad. But crossed chainsaws and tattoos and, you know, I knew some bikers back then while I was shooting that thing, you know, and I had that LG tattoo on, and they would just freshen the color every couple of days. And I went out and I was going to eat in this place, and I bumped into these bikers I knew, and they looked over at me. I was with somebody else, and I looked over there, and all these bikers taking a look at me, and they're going, they thought I got a tattoo.
what do you think about the fact that it's kind of gotten a whole new audience?
I think it's remarkable. I think the authenticity of the first one had such an impact on people that you still around Austin bump into people that you say, oh, well, I worked on that. Well, I heard that was a true story, wasn't it? I knew somebody that... It had a documentary feel, maybe because of 16 and various handheld things. And this was big screen, 35, and a broader kind of comedy. The first one was comedic. Look what your brother did to the door. That doesn't go in a horror movie except if you're having fun. So it was a little broader, and people did not understand that. They didn't understand, I don't think, probably me and Dennis and Caroline. Who knows? That this is too much to take in all at once. Have I had a good time? It's a completely different experience than, oh man, you know, Chainsaw came out in the 70s when people were taking dope and taking acid and going to movies. And they'd freak out and they'd go away and they'd be freaked out. You know, my first convention that I went to, it was like people had to come to me and bear witness as if they had been on a sojourn on some sort of a thing, a crusade, and they had to come to me and say, the first time I saw Chainsaw Massacre, it scared the shit out of me. Yeah,